Fuck that up.
Yeah, you didn't play our intro.
Yeah, I completely fucked that up.
Yeah,
It's
I
all
mean,
good. I could play
you're
it now.
you're a consummate professional.
It's the gut level. It's the gut level. Yeah, it's the gut level. It's the gut level.
You have now tuned into the Gut Level Podcast.
Hey, hey,
Rome.
what's
Happy
up,
Super
young
Bowl
CB3?
Sunday.
It is. It is Super Bowl Sunday, which I'll get. Let's do picks
Okay.
at the end of the show.
All right.
Yeah.
So you gotta stick around to hear the picks from Rome and myself.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
All right.
Exciting though. Super Bowl is exciting, even though the best team is not currently in the Super Bowl. But it's the script. It's the
The
script.
script, the NFL script is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
it wasn't our year to be in the script, so they had to write us out. It happens sometimes.
Yeah, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, it didn't fit in line with the framework that the NFL had created for the Super Bowl this year. Right.
Exactly. They actually wanted him to get hurt. So,
Yeah.
I'll, where's my tinfoil? Oh man. Either way, it's been over a week since our last episode.
It
What's up
sure
with that,
has.
man?
I don't know. I mean, here we are now. At least we've been putting some short form together,
This is true.
starting to get on a little bit of a roll with some content development. So we will be far more consistent in our weekly podcast recording and episodes, but we're
We
just
will.
getting our
We will.
hands dirty.
It's exciting, man. What are we going to talk about today, Chris?
The passionate journey
Mm,
towards purpose.
mm,
Hmm.
I like that. That that's like a Hallmark movie title. The passionate journey to
or,
purpose.
or Lifetime. It's a Lifetime movie. Or
Lifetime.
oh.
That's what I meant. See, I knew you watched those movies. I
Yeah,
knew it.
exactly. That's where I got the title of the episode today.
It's plagiarism. I got it. I got you. I got you. Look, the best form of flattery is imitation. So
Yeah, why not?
shout out Lifetime Movie Network.
Not a sponsor yet.
No, not
Yet.
yet.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm looking forward to diving into the idea of purpose and passion, right? I mean, I think that we oftentimes as men talk about this idea of purpose and,
Right.
in your and I's story and kind of how we've gotten here, which we talked a lot about in episode 1. So if you haven't checked out episode 1, go back and check out a little bit of how Rome and I got here. But that idea of purpose and for me, just kind of that it's ever evolving, which is really fascinating and
Mm,
interesting, and feel like you find the purpose in life and a ton of passion behind it. And then the target kind of continues to move over time. So I think it's an
yeah.
interesting dialogue to get in here around how this evolves, changes, and grows in each and every one of us.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a great topic, and it's also just a good way to kind of start off the show, last week talking about kind of who we are and how we got here, and then diving into what I believe to be probably one of the most important um, topics that's relevant to kind of what we are doing. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good place to be. Um, Before we get started, though, a little recap of last week. As Chris said, if you haven't watched it, go check it out. Basically, it's an introduction to not only the Gut Level podcast slash community YouTube channel, etc., but also, I think that we both do a good job of giving kind of a rundown of who we are, kind of how we got here, We talked about what it was like, a bit about what happened, and then, dived into kind of what it's like now, in that being kind of, this is the journey. We're currently on the journey. Thank you for tuning in. Continue to tune in, because this is kind of what it is like now. So if you haven't seen last episode, definitely check it out. Banger, right, Chris?
Well, for sure. And I think it was a natural progression into the topic today because, then we start talking
Yeah.
about purpose and passion, right? And this being obviously one of our, strongest passions, right now, but also the idea of purpose and masculinity and community building and that journey. So I think it was a natural kind of step into this direction in the episode today. And, the last piece of that recap is also about, us remaining accountable, because as
Mm,
we talk about this being a firsthand and
true.
real-time accounting of our growth, staying accountable to keeping vulnerable, keeping authentic, and staying real with what's going on. So I'm super excited to get into episode number 2.
Number 2, baby. Yeah. Now, before we get started, quick disclaimer. Hey guys, welcome to The Gut Level. Look, as always, we appreciate you tuning in and checking us out. But before we get started, we do want to share a couple things with you.
The Gut Level is a safe, inclusive community, you guys. So as long as you identify as a human being, you are welcome here. So whether you're a man, woman, LGBTQ, black, white, brown, gender non-binary, you're welcome here to a firsthand, real-time accounting of men's transformation and growth. You might ask, whose? Ours.
Yeah, look, we started this channel to help men evolve by creating connection and inspiring growth, with the point being to really remove that experience of isolation and the aloneness of being a man.
And when we remove that, what happens? We become a part of a tribe and a community.
Yeah, look, disclaimer, we do not have the solutions nor the answers, and we are not experts. Our only qualifications is that we're just two regular ass dudes
helping to normalize men's humanity one experience at a time. So, welcome, like the video, subscribe to the channel, join our community below, and welcome to The Gut Level.
Enjoy the episode.
We sure are asking questions at the
Good
Gut
stuff.
Level.
Good stuff, man.
In every episode, we got 4 of them. So let's start off today with question 1, Rome. What action can you or have you taken this week that's going to contribute to something you'll be proud of in 10 years?
What action have I or can I take? Well, I mean, look, we talked about it last episode with the whole accountability idea of, continuing on this journey that we've started. We're going to talk a lot more about the journey um, in today's episode. But one of those things for me personally was getting back out there, right? I've had somewhat of a fear, which, we'll talk about in the next one, in the next part of this. But I've had somewhat of a fear. I've been off of social media for a year. And before that, I was heavily on social media, got off of it, and then coming back on, there was like a fear of, maybe I don't know how to do this anymore. I'm super insecure. Anyway, I smashed and stomped that fear this week. I posted a bunch of shorts on the YouTube channel, one of which was actually a poem that I'd written myself. I wrote it recently and I'd been sitting on it, and it was super vulnerable to me. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put it out there. And so I recorded it on TikTok. I posted it. It's gotten a ton of traction. A ton of people are reaching out saying, oh my God, this poem affected me and it touched me. And, I'd love to talk more. And it was just like a sigh of relief. Like, wow, like, I was hesitant and nervous to do this, to be back out here in a public place, in a public frame, putting myself out there, being vulnerable. And I smashed that this week. and I feel fantastic. And that's actually gonna, continue to. I'm proud of it right now, but I know that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm gonna be even more proud because what we're trying to create is much bigger than just what we're doing today. Right now we're laying the foundation and the groundwork, and
Right.
that's something I'm proud of, man. And it's action that I'm taking. I know you're taking as well, and it's going to play a big role in the future. And so it's something that I'm stoked about.
Yeah, you should be. I mean, the poem itself is fire. So, for those listening and
Thank you.
watching, definitely check out at the gut level on TikTok
Yeah,
and see what Rome is talking about.
we're on TikTok, man. Crazy,
No doubt.
crazy. But question number two, young CB3, what is something new that you are currently trying out, doing, something new?
I wish I had a different answer, but it's on the same lines as you. Is engaging socially in community, and I've started to focus far more on the LinkedIn side of the world and kind of how does a lot of what we're talking about here at the gut level and in our personal lives really impact the professional side as well. And so I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks generating daily content, engaging in
Mm,
social. And for those that know me, this is not the area I ever thought I would be in, never thought I wanted to be in.
right,
Actually was for many years a hater on social media, um,
right.
to the
Yes, you
point of
were.
not even having accounts.
Yep,
And so
I
the
remember.
fact of daily getting up and attempting to write new content, to generate community, to be a part of community, that in itself is definitely something new. And I know I was telling you earlier about not batching content either. So really getting in the frame
Right,
of every day, getting in the habit of writing and generating copy and being a
yeah,
part of community. And so I'm looking forward to it because as we're talking about on here, that gut level is all about us building community and engaging with our community. So I'm super stoked to be doing it, but it is definitely something new for me. Definitely something uncomfortable, and similarly, just continuing to push through every day, especially when my mind's like, you don't have anything to say anyone wants to listen
right.
to, or no one's going to care about this. Just pushing through it, getting content out, engaging, and just being myself. So,
And look, man, I know you probably don't want to hear this, but you were made for this stuff, man. In my humble opinion, you are a leader. You should be out there, and the way that people respond to you, I think it's fantastic.
well, I appreciate the kind words, and I'm also stoked that you're going to be doing TikTok and some of the more video based content, and I can stick with writing content. I feel like it's a bit more up my alley. So, I guess we'll see where all that goes. Who
No
knows?
doubt.
We'll look back at episode 2 a year from now, and we'll see exactly where all this pans out.
Yeah, we'll be like, oh God.
Question number 3: what is something that you didn't do this week because of fear?
Mm. Man, we prep for these questions, so
Nah,
we have these questions
I'm hitting you hard with it. Yeah.
beforehand, and automatically one thing came to mind because it's what I did not do this week out of fear. But then I'm searching, I'm trying to figure out any other way I can answer this question without sharing the thing I actually did not do out of fear. And I haven't found a good enough excuse. So I guess I will
Okay.
share it, which is uh, fearful in of itself. But I had the opportunity this week to go on a date, maybe.
Mm.
Um, More of maybe like a social uh, gathering between two people, if you will. And and I had previously said yes to it. Um, and then as soon as I said yes to meeting up with someone, and it's not even a stranger, and it wasn't even like an actual hey, this is a date. It was literally let's go get coffee and catch up, and and then I bailed on it and I made up an excuse and I didn't go. And now I'm sharing it publicly, and that person may potentially see this and know that I bailed on them. But
Mm.
yeah, man, I was afraid. I was insecure. I could tell you that it's a much deeper conversation, man. But, you know, my whole life I've been a very social person and never had any insecurities socially. Maybe been a bit socially awkward, but have always been super comfortable with that. And coming out of this last relationship that I was in, I feel like self-esteem took a huge blow, man. A ton of insecurity, fear, and this week I did not do something out of fear, which is unlike me, and it's something that I'm not entirely disappointed about, but I am aware that fear is playing a role, and that the best thing that I can do is walk through that fear. So, little bit of embarrassment to admit that. But yeah,
Well, I can
that
say, I mean,
happened.
you and I talk so often in between these episodes, and oftentimes about everything that we're going to be talking about, anyways. And this is something that you didn't even talk to me about, so I'm hearing about it for the first time, and so I appreciate just your authenticity and being able to talk about it in a public forum.
Yeah. I wasn't going to. I was literally this entire time I was trying to think up of anything else that I could say. But that also wouldn't be authentic, and that's not what we're about here at the gut level. So we lead by example. And as embarrassing as it is, yeah, man, I bailed on a potential date out of fear.
Hmm.
It is what it is. But
Well, if we had more time, we would dive into it, and I have a feeling that maybe we'll be diving into that in a future episode. So.
possible, possible. But you didn't ask about that, so we won't touch that. Question number 4 to you, Chris, which now that I'm reading it seems a lot less intrusive or invasive. But what is something that you are currently reading?
I love how we go from just straight gut level question and response to what am I reading?
Well,
Uh,
I mean, look, we also want to provide a ton of value, right? That's something that we're passionate about, and that's part of our purpose. So, in this, I think that, what are you reading and how is it, contributing to you is of great value and something that I'm interested in.
yeah, for sure. Surprisingly enough, man, and I'm reading A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which, as someone that's been so into growth and development and masculinity and purpose and right and suffering, and suffering being such a huge part of my journey, I'm really surprised I haven't read this book before, and I've actually finished it. Um, but Yeah, so much of what it's oriented towards, which really resonates with me, is the idea of how we find meaning in suffering and how we
Mm,
get through these times in life that are so challenging and so dark in so many ways, and where so many people lose hope and so many people lose the idea that there could be any reason for this or any way through this. And it's this gentleman's journey through concentration camps in World War II, and the suffering that he went through, and ultimately how he turned that suffering into purpose. And so,
mm,
hugely impactful book. I think most people have read this book, because anyone I've talked to about it is like, yeah, man, of course I read that. 15 years ago,
right.
I read that 10 years ago. I just got around to it, but A Man's Search for Meaning, and a reminder for everyone out there that we'll have links, and just links for everything in the
Check it out.
description, and definitely a hugely impactful book around finding meaning in suffering.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it. So that's great, man. And would you say
And
it's second time reading it?
no, no, first time.
First time.
Yeah.
Got you.
So
Cool.
this is
Well, you'll have
amazing
to
that
give us an
you
update.
haven't read it, you know? So, you'll have to check it out and talk a little bit about what your experience was as well at some
No
point.
doubt. No doubt. Cool. Like Chris said, all links will be in the description below, so you can check out the book, check out the TikTok. We're out here. We're doing it. And again, like, comment, subscribe, um, join the community.
No doubt. Yeah, share this video. We're just hanging out here. Ooh, change it up a little
So
bit.
every episode, we start with three things: one topic, two perspectives, and three invitations. This week, topic is passion and purpose. What was the Hallmark title?
The Hallmark title? The passionate journey
the
towards
passionate
purpose
journey. Mm, that's good. That's
just
good.
lands.
It does, man. It does. So why don't you start us off with your perspective, Chris, your story, your experience with passion and purpose.
Yeah, I love it, man. You and I have had these conversations a lot over the years, and I've had them a lot with other people in general about the idea of finding purpose and meaning in life. And
Mm,
the reason I like the idea of it being this journey, right, and this journey towards purpose is that every time I've gotten to a place in life, really over the last 15 years of being a, I guess what I'd consider a somewhat responsible adult, um, my idea of purpose has continually shifted and changed over the years. Um, and so, I started with this real belief in my early 20s that I was put on this earth to really be with people in the trenches, as we talk about, of life. And the people that are really suffering in some way. And for me, it was a personal passion at that point. And I felt like this was one of the reasons I was on this earth, was to really be with people who have experienced darkness and pain and suffering, and to offer, really experience strength and hope that there is something on the other side of this. And what I did in my mid 20s was I turned that personal passion and purpose into professional, and began working in the helping profession, and actually,
right.
providing for myself, through helping people, towards a place of wellness. Um, and I fell out of love with that in my mid 30s. So it's about 10 years, and start to really fall out of love with the idea of helping people, and not in the sense of not wanting to help people anymore, but just from a professional perspective, being in a
Maybe
place of,
would you say just like not no longer passionate about that?
um, I wouldn't say passionate. I think that people might be able to relate with the idea that sometimes the external factors become really overwhelming. And so I started thinking about how, like,
Mm,
big pharma was targeting people, and has a pill for everything, that every
right.
symptom of the human experience big pharma has, and watching people get stuck on medications, and not really addressing the kind of underlying core causes and conditions of why they were unhappy, or why they were depressed, or why they were anxious. and
Gotcha.
and then, like, regulation, right? Like, I mean, we worked in
Yeah.
mental health care for so long, and watching insurance companies not want to pay for good treatment, and
God, yeah.
want to underpay for
Yeah.
everything. And then, all of these things, as somebody who has felt this, like, purpose in this world, it becomes really overwhelming, and, like, I start to lose sleep over it, and I start to get really angry and resentful. And
Mm,
how am I supposed to fight against, I'm one man, or part of a kind of a little industry. How do we fight against these big
yeah.
powers that be? And and also the fact that, like, professionally speaking, 99% of the United States can't afford good treatment, right? And so then you're thinking about,
Yeah.
well, even the world that we're living in, we're treating the 1% that is making a couple 100,000 a year and has good insurance. And you just start to think about, and things become really overwhelming. and
Yeah.
and so yeah, I
Could make
mean,
you angry.
yeah, resentment is like a big one, and just how often I've had those conversations about just being super resentful at the
Right.
way that the system is built. Um, and so, when it comes to that idea of, like, passion and purpose, in my mid 30s, it then shifted towards, and this was again part of what we talked about last week, and how life changed was, I lost a lot of the things that were really important to me as
Mm.
a result of kind of this never ending drive and passion and purpose towards helping others, was I was giving 100% towards that, but then I was leaving 0% for the rest of my life, for family, for
Mm.
friends, for fun, for
Yeah.
other endeavors, for taking care of myself. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I heard one time, if I give 100% to this thing, like, although it's my purpose in this world, or I think it is, then I'm like neglecting all these things that are super important to me, and important to all of us. Right.
It's true.
And so then when that pain hit and that suffering hit of losing a lot in life, then it shifted towards, well, how do I show up in this world? Um, towards being able to prioritize the things that are really important. And then it was like, yeah, like that thing that stressed me out, like the helping people and all that, like I'm going to push that over there. And
Right.
so part of my story, and when we talk about this journey, was that I really had to fall back in love with the fact that, like, I'm on this earth to help people
Mm.
that are experiencing darkness and are
Yeah.
experiencing pain. And every time I've tried to move away from that and to like go do something else, work in a different industry, show up in the world a different way, all this, I actually internally become really misaligned. Um, and so
Mm.
I heard from somebody one time that, and it's really resonated, the idea that sometimes we have to fall in love with our purpose, because like that purpose is there. But sometimes when we fight against it, we experience all this discomfort, all this pain, all this suffering. And sometimes we got to fall in love with it. And so I
Yeah.
think where I am now
Yeah.
with, with the
That's
gut
good.
level, with what I'm doing professionally, the way I'm showing up in the world personally, I had to actually finally become good with the fact that, like, this is my path. My
Mm.
path is to show up, to be present, to ask questions, to help people ask themselves these deep, meaningful questions about life, about pain, about suffering, um, so that they can continue to take steps forward in their own lives and we can grow together. And so that's why I talk about it being a journey. And I think what's really relevant for like
Yeah.
our listeners is that, I would have told you at 24 that I had found my purpose and I had found my passion. And I'm there now at 38, but it's taken these many iterations to actually get to this place. And I'm not convinced that it won't continue to go through these different changes over time. That next
Like
year,
continue to change. Like it's constantly
absolutely.
changing, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Like life, like life's
Yeah.
constant. The only thing constant is change. Um,
There you go.
and so I think, for
It's
everyone, and
interesting.
including our relationship, I've watched you, I've watched me, I've watched people that we're close to continually go through this process of experiencing the world in different ways, and really, finding passion in a whole lot of different areas, and
Mm.
purpose, that changes and evolves over time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You have a different perspective than I would maybe on it. It's just what you kind of described was like over time you maybe fell in love with it, but then had to learn to re-love it, and then boom, it's like this is your purpose and you're passionate about it. And it's somewhat that sometimes over the years like a roller coaster and it's constantly changing and you're realigning. um, Yet today you're very acutely aware that hey, this is why you're here.
For sure. And it's not just that. I mean, a whole conversation could probably be had around, well, then how do we manage that? Right. Because I,
Yeah.
I, I I look at and talk to a lot of people that say, like, well, the reason I'm, working 80 hours a week and I'm not home for my family and I'm not this is because I'm so passionate and I feel like my
So
purpose
passionate.
is to do this. And so
Right.
I'm glad that I got to go through that process, which was that although this is absolutely my purpose on this earth, as far as this moment in time, and what I really feel aligned to, that it doesn't mean that I sacrifice these other things that I
Mm.
also feel are extremely important, and generate that happiness for me and that fun and that play and all this too. And so I think the next kind of version of that is like, although helping people is absolutely the reason that I'm here. And I know that it can't come at the sacrifice of relationships. It can't come at the
Right.
sacrifice of business opportunities. It can't come at the sacrifice of relationships. It can't at the sake of my self-care, of play, a lot of this. And so what I've done differently at 38 versus what I did in like my early 30s is being able to balance a lot of this stuff. Right. And so a
Balance.
lot of people would argue with that and like work-life balance and doesn't make sense and
Yeah.
all of this and I agree to an extent, but what I will say is that I'm at this point unwilling to not do the things that are good for me,
Mm,
not to prioritize self-care, not to prioritize relationships. It's all about how do I actually fit all of this in? How do I still go have fun and do all the things I really enjoy doing, but still stay really aligned to my purpose?
that's good, man.
It's a
That's
heck of a journey.
and I think that's the point you're making, is that it is a journey.
Yeah.
That it's not a destination. It's not a place you end up. It's not, okay, I'm gonna search for it, and once I find it, I got it. It's constant evolution, journey, process,
And how do I not lose myself in it?
and how, yeah,
Like that, I think for me is
important.
that's what I focus on right now more than anything is like, you and I are in this journey with the gut level and like building
Right.
community. And it feels so important to me. And yet I could lose myself easily in that. And so it's like, how do I stay grounded, to being able to, watch the Super Bowl today and not be distracted, put my phone away, not be constantly on
Yeah.
social, responding to comments, getting content out, right? Like, and that, there's a lot of imperfection in it. And like the
Mm.
more that I can be okay with the imperfection and not become so rigid to my purpose is also super important.
Well, and that's where experience becomes a huge benefit, right? Is that you've had years and years of experience of maybe not being in balance and losing yourself and losing things and relationships and business opportunities and this and that. And over the years, those experiences now lead you to maybe be in a better place, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the idea that wisdom comes from experience,
Right.
and I always like joke about, the 23-year-old life coach, right? It's like
Right.
I'm not like, look, we can get coaching certifications, and you and I were young in a helping profession, and
Right.
you have to learn skills and tools and techniques. And I'm not saying that school and education is not important, right? Like, of course it is, but I think like it'd be hard to position myself as somebody that has experience or wisdom, being able to help anybody. Um,
Yeah.
with their life unless I've actually gone through a lot of it myself. And so, yeah, I mean, at 38, I've definitely gone through a lot and no, I've got a whole hell of a lot to continue to go through, which is why when I sit down with buddies of mine that are in their 60s and talk about this stuff, they kind of chuckle and they're like, yeah, like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know you feel like you are where you are now,
Yeah.
but you're going to have a whole lot more that continues to happen. Just continue to ride the wave, baby. And,
Yeah.
be a surfer, be a surfer on the wave and realize that it'll crash and then you'll get back on and all that. So,
It's
but,
true.
but I'd love to hear from you, right? I mean, we talk about two perspectives. And so I'd love to hear as I know you, but our viewers don't know you super well yet is, what's been your journey towards, towards purpose, and what's that been
Mm.
like? And what's that kind of arc look like for you or that journey look like? And
Yeah, well, I think that, a lot of it is the same. We talked about in the last episode. There's like our lives have been a mirror for a while now. And so a lot of the same things that you went through, I also went through, you
yeah.
know, losing myself in a business and therefore I lost the business, and losing myself in relationships and then lost the relationships, and passion and purpose and is has been ever evolving and changing. But one thing that, after hearing you talk about it and share your perspective, that I just wanted to go back on, because I think there's probably people out there that will relate to this, is that for the first 24 or 5 years of my life, I had zero purpose.
Mm.
I had zero purpose and zero passion.
I didn't even think about
And
going there. I'm glad you're going there.
and so what 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 that looked like, and I've shared a bit about my past and my history and my upbringing and the trauma and drama and turmoil that my life was like, prior to the age of 23. And a lot of that played a part in why I had no passion and no purpose. But regardless, what that did for my life was it allowed me to flush it down the drain with little to no remorse, right? And I used to share with people about this that, I gave up sports. I played sports at a high level and I gave sports up because that wasn't my purpose or my passion. And I had no attachment to it. And therefore, I just gave it up. I joined the Marine Corps because I didn't really care about my life. I didn't have a purpose or a passion. Therefore, if something terrible would have happened to me, it wouldn't have mattered. In
Mm.
my head, I became a drug addict and addicted to heroin and strung out and got locked up and was homeless, partly because I had no passion or purpose. That it didn't matter if I was a junkie living under a bridge because, you know, who was I? I wasn't living for anything. And I think that there's a lot of people out there right now that maybe don't have a passion or purpose in life and they feel like they're spinning the wheels and they have no direction and nothing to live for, no identity, no self-awareness, no self-esteem, right? And they're struggling with depression, anxiety, fear, right? They're struggling with addiction. They're strung out. They have other addictions, right? And I think that lack of passion and purpose plays a huge part in that, to the point where my original sponsor, when I finally got sober, this man helped me out. And part of how he helped me out of that bottomless pit that I was in was he explained to me that in the law of the world is when you remove something, you have to replace it with something that is equal or greater value for it to
Mm.
stick. And for me, I was removing addiction, like a heavy, heavy addiction, but also the depression, the fear, the anger, the anxiety, the self-loathing. I was trying to remove all that from my life so I could have a better life and recover. But the only thing that I can replace that with, aside from some spirituality, was to have a passion and purpose in life.
Mm.
So very early on, he told me, my mentor, my sponsor, the person that saved my life essentially told me that I needed to find a passion and a purpose. I needed some direction so that I could start building self-esteem, so I could start learning to love myself and having a reason to live. And I asked him, how do I do that? And he said, well, do as many things as you possibly can, and through elimination, you will find something that you're passionate about, good at, and maybe you'll also find your purpose. And so that's what I did, man. When I was 23 years old, I did all kinds of stuff. And fortunately for me, it didn't take too long. I realized that, like you, Chris, my passion and my purpose is in helping other people.
But
At the
before
time, it was
you,
specific to addiction, but
but before,
that's what I
but
learned.
But before you go there, I think an interesting thing that I would love to chat about a little bit, and especially for our viewers to think about, is when you said the idea of go out and just try a ton of stuff, right?
Yeah,
I think that can be like overwhelming. What do you mean try a bunch of stuff? Like, I've
yeah.
tried working 3 different jobs. I've done this. Like, what did that look like for you, and what does that mean to you if you were going to tell somebody to go out and just try a ton of stuff so that you can actually kind of, through a process of deduction,
Yeah.
go, okay, this is something I feel really strongly about.
I do tell people to do that all the time, right? In business, in a sponsorship, even with friends, I tell people all the time, well, like, try stuff. And yeah, I had the same question. What does that mean? Right. And so this man literally told me, go like physically do new things every day. Go read new books about different things. Like, go to the library, go surf, go get a job doing this, go volunteer at, the Salvation Army, like physically go do something different than anything that I had done prior. Because he said, look, everything that you've done prior to this, if it was something you were passionate about, or if it truly was your purpose, you would know it by now. And I always thought that was weird. Like, what am I just, is a light bulb just going to pop off and a big neon sign say, hey, this is the thing for you? I never understood that until I went out and I started volunteering. And one of the places I volunteered at was a drug and, addiction program in downtown San Diego that was, more catered to homeless people, to be honest, people that didn't have anything. And so I would show
Yeah.
up at this place, and I was in rehab at the time myself, but I was in a little bit better place, and I would show up and I would just hang out with these people, and I realized almost like a light bulb went off in my head in the process of talking to another person and them getting relief from the conversation we were having. I realized, oh shit, like this is what I was meant for. This was it. And I did a lot of other things, man. I went and volunteered at a hospice center in San Diego as well. I went and would go pick up dog crap at the dog park. I would go and just like clean up the dog park. I went out and surfed for the first time and realized that I enjoyed that. It wasn't something I was super passionate about, but it became a hobby of mine. And so when I tell people today to do that, to go find something, a lot of time the pushback is on like, where do I start? And so what I would tell people is like literally they have these they have these oh man, I'm blanking. Oh, they have these career tests, right? And I have a great example. When I was in fifth grade, sixth grade, I did a career test, and it was literally you fill out the bubbles, and then based on whatever number you got at the end of the test, there would be a page at the back, and it would tell you, hey, this is the career that you were meant for based
I
on this
remember.
kind of personality test.
Yeah.
When I had done it in sixth grade, I was like, I don't need to do this. I'm gonna be an astronaut, right? And that was prior to 23. That was the only dream I had ever had, was I wanted to be an astronaut. And this teacher flipped through the book and she said, well, astronaut's not on one of the pages, so do the test. And I was like, wow. I did the test and I flipped the page, and everyone else is like, oh, I got doctor, I got, flight attendant, I got pilot, I got whatever. I'm flipping, what am I gonna get? And it says trash truck driver. And I asked the teacher, I said,
I love
what?
it.
And she said, yeah, I guess, you're supposed to be a truck driver. And that day, I remember that day, I sold out on my dream of ever becoming an astronaut. And it was because of stupid fucking career test.
You know what's
And
really
not
funny?
blaming the
I can't
teacher for
even.
that,
Yeah. I mean,
and not saying that I could have ever been an astronaut, but I remember I sold out that day. However, later in life, it comes full circle, man. I now use that same career test for other people that are like fledgling and don't know what to do in life, have no passions, have no purpose. I tell them, yo, go do the career, go do this career test, and then look at all the careers in the back. And not necessarily to go find a new job, although sometimes your job can be your purpose or your passion, right? Like you had said, business. We made a business about what we do, helping others. And so, to a certain extent, I'm passionate about the business and what I do for work. But it's at least a place to start. And what happens a lot of times is people will be like, wow, I did this career test and it says I should be a marine biologist. I have never even thought about being a marine biologist. But the reality is like that's something that is interesting to me, and I would like to check it out. And it's like, cool, that's a
well, and
good
you're
place to start.
and you're just talking about. I mean, you're going more down the path of career, which of course I think like people can find purpose in
True,
their
true,
career,
true.
but definitely
I'm
it
just
doesn't
I'm
need to
just
be
using it as
regulated
a
that way.
place to start,
I will
you know?
say that it's interesting that you got that. I don't think I'd heard that story before, but all I wanted to be as a kid was a trash man. My mom tells us all these stories about
You,
how,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
I'd go
I
outside
remember that.
when the trash truck would come and like the guys were riding on the back of the truck and like
That's so funny.
I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And one day the trash truck broke down outside of our house. My mom said it was like the greatest day of my life because I
That's
got to go out
awesome.
and hang out with the trash guys and like stand on the back of the truck and all that. So I think, again, whenever I hear trash man
That's
stories,
great.
I think like that's fantastic, because that's literally what I wanted to be when I was a kid. I thought how cool you'd be outside and you'd ride on the
Right.
back of the truck and like what an adventure. Um, you know, but I think like I want to circle back because again, I do think when we talk about career, that's important. But I think what I've taken so much value out of what you've started to share about is this idea of going out and trying stuff. And I did this in my head. I don't even remember if you said it this way, but it's like pick one thing a day
Yeah.
that you're going to try that's different from yesterday
Yep.
and just like commit to doing something like that, whether it's for a week, a month, 6 months, a year, whatever. But like the value probably in trying new things, I think is huge
Yeah.
when we talk about this idea of purpose and passion, right? If you don't feel like you have one, go out and try something new once a day. And like at least you're going to have a pretty cool experience after a month of trying like 30 new things that you
A
didn't
hundred
try
percent.
before.
Yeah, man. And the career is just like what it is not even if you're gonna go down that path as like a job or something. It's just a good place to start spinning the wheels a little bit, start thinking about it, because there are so many things out there to do, and I think that we have a tendency sometimes being here in our home, where in our life, wherever we're doing, like we're comfortable, we're kind of, this is our zone, it's familiar, right? And so to leave that zone for any reason, it's most people don't do it. So it's like, okay, you're gonna have to leave the comfort of familiarity in order to learn anything new or experience anything new, which includes passion and purpose. But I can almost guarantee this, and I would like to know if this was your experience. But once you come in contact with the thing that becomes your purpose, it's immediate recognition. So
Mm.
you don't have to waste a month doing something, wondering, is this for me? Am I on the right path? No. Like you should know almost immediately upon doing that thing. Okay. And that was my experience. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, it was. And I think you and I are going to have a little bit different of an experience here because we talk about finding purpose in profession, right? And the things that we've done. And I think that there's also this huge percentage of people that are never going to find their purpose in what generates income for them and how they
Right.
provide for their families. So one of the things I'd be interested in is how does this conversation fit with you being a father, for example? And like I know that when you talk to me about being a dad, I literally hung up the phone when I was in Italy and we talked about this. And I went, my purpose on this earth is actually to be a father. And I'm
Mm,
not a father right now. But since that phone call with you, where I said, tell me what it's like to be a father, and you, in the most teary eyed way, talked to me for 45 minutes on Zoom nonstop about the purpose that you felt being a father, I went, actually, that's it. And you said something that was magical to me. You said you finally realized that the purpose that you found in being a father is exactly what had been missing too. So it's such an interesting conversation because I think about all the people out
yeah.
there that say like, I go to work, I come home, but like my purpose is here is to be a father, it's to be a mother, it's to be of service, like you said, to be of service to homeless, like anyway. So I know I'm tangenting a little bit, but like I want to circle to that too, because I think it's easy for us to be like, yeah, like we got the best of both
Of
worlds.
course.
We help people, we get paid for it. But I think there's this huge amount of people that don't. And I'd love to hear about your experience and like the purpose that you found in being a father.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what I said. Just go try new things. Go have a kid, you know, and maybe it's for you. If not, try something else. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Well,
Don't do that. That's
of course, you're
irresponsible.
kidding. Yeah, I mean, irresponsible, and yeah, a lot of people are completely irresponsible like that, and don't show up for their kids, and
Unfortunately,
have not
yes.
taken the path that you have in being a father. But I mean, I think for our viewers, and even for me, like, I mean, it's incredibly powerful and inspiring conversation that changed my life. I know, and made me want to be a father one day. But I guess I would love
Well,
to spin it and see what was that like for you in terms of shifting the idea of purpose and passion.
Well, I think that to just preface that, I think that like anything else, right? Like our identity becomes our belief system, and our belief system is based on our upbringing, what we learned, what we saw, what we experienced, prior to the age of 18. And therefore, a lot of that is like bullshit, to be honest. A lot of it are fallacies that we create. And one of those fallacies for me was because my dad was never around in my life and he was a deadbeat in and out of prison, homeless, and never around. I believed that I should not be a father. And so I
Mm,
made a decision very early on in life that I was going to avoid being a father at all costs. And I don't mean being a deadbeat. I was going to do everything in my power to not be a father, as in have a child, right?
right.
Now, unfortunately, the world doesn't work like that sometimes, and the universe has other plans. So when I found out that my ex-wife was pregnant at the time, I was completely discouraged, um, and just upset, confused, and then my entire world changed. And I tell the story, and I don't want to drag on too long, but when my daughter was born, they put her in a little basket in the hospital and they roll her into the next room and they said, "Dad, do you want to come be with her?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I walked up there and there was no one else in the room. All the nurses had left to go help sew her up. And so I was in there and there was a little baby sitting there and I put my hand down and I just brushed her face and she smiled at me. And it was like my entire universe, every barrier, every fallacy, and every belief, every bullshit conversation I had in my head about who I am and what I wanted, it all shattered in an instant, and my cold, solid, still heart melted. And in one smile, in one instant, my entire universe changed, my priorities changed, and everything I knew about myself changed. And from that moment forward, my entire life has been, how can I be the best father that I can be? And yeah, I get a little bit emotional about it because I love it, man. It's not something I ever, ever, ever wanted or would have imagined was for me. And today it's the biggest joy of my life. It's something that I'm most proud of, to the point where I think that, where I might differ from your idea of passion and purpose, and in being like a one set linear thing, I do believe, being a father is my greatest passion and my highest purpose today, where, you know, that all I want to do is give them the best life possible. I believe that it's one of many.
Mm,
And over the years, my experience has been is like a puzzle for me that's not completed and maybe will never be completed. But through the seasons of my life, I begin to gather different pieces to that puzzle. And the only way that I've been able to gather those different pieces that I can then start to put together to build this beautiful puzzle piece of my life is through trial and error, through discovery, through exploration, through new experiences and trying new things and going different places and saying, fuck fear, I'm going to go for it. And in that process, yeah, being a father is one of the most beautiful, brightest pieces of the puzzle that I got to lay down, along with helping homeless people, along with helping drug addicts, along with creating engaging content, along with being a son
right.
and a friend. And so, like, today, my life is more complete than it's ever been. And 5 years from now, it's going to be even more complete than it's ever been. And
Mm,
it's because we get to continue to gather those pieces to the puzzle. And for anyone out there that has any misbelief about parenthood or being a parent or a father, you don't think you're cut out for it, you don't think you're ready, or because your dad wasn't around when you were growing up, therefore you shouldn't be a father. That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
yeah. Well, look, I mean, first off, I love how we structure this into experiences because, that is the one thing for our viewers that Roman and I do not spend time actually talking about what our experiences are.
Right.
And so, although there's a framework to what we're jumping on here to talk about, when we say one experience or topic, we talk about that, the two perspectives on this topic. We don't dive into that at all. And I love that in this moment, I took the approach of what it's been like in this part of my life that I've actually been able to look at purpose and
Yeah.
look at passion and do that with a clear mind and a clear direction. And I love that you started it and actually said, hey, like there's a process for a lot of us that occurs before we can even have those conversations. And the idea that then we get to look at purpose and this journey towards purpose through this lens of the puzzle pieces, right? And that, like, to me, and I would love your thoughts, but to me the puzzle's almost never complete. It's more that
Yeah.
we're adding another piece to it, and like we're getting closer over time, as you
Right.
mentioned, being a father and helping people and being of service and doing all these different things. But yet the puzzle probably never becomes complete until the day that ultimately we transition out of this world and we're no longer alive as a
Or
human.
maybe we continue to pass that puzzle on to our children, and
Mm,
we try to give them as many pieces as they possibly can have so that they start off ahead of where we did, you
100%.
know? It's just something to think about. One of the things that you had talked about, though, that I haven't really acknowledged at all, but is fascinating, is what you were describing, in dealing with fatigue. It sounded like burnout, man. And I have for sure experienced burnout, but I never looked at it through the lens of passion or purpose burnout. But that's got to be what it is, right?
For me, what I tend to always hear is, yeah, it's like I'm burnt out because I'm working too much. I'm burnt out because, I'm too compassionate. Maybe I'm giving back to a cause,
Too
to
compassionate.
homelessness, for example. And so people talk about like compassion fatigue or some of this.
That's what
What
it is.
what I've become really aligned with is actually I don't get tired or burnt out or fatigue in any way when I'm just aligned with my purpose.
Mm.
So it doesn't mean I don't have to take a look at myself and
So what you were mentioning was more when you start to shy away from your path. That's when you start to feel that.
yeah. And again, somebody watching this might be like, you're crazy, you know what I mean? If you're a counselor and you're seeing 25 clients a day and like, is that a lot? And getting burnt out because you're doing that for 6 months straight. Yeah, of
Right.
course, but to me, that's actually going back to, do I have boundaries and different things? Excuse me, boundaries and different things. But to me, I don't become burnt out, even if I'm completely crushing life or a business or whatever, as long as I'm fully aligned to my greatest purpose. Now, the beauty
So
of
how do you
that,
stay there?
well, what you described though, right? So the greatest purpose isn't this one thing. The purpose is, how am I showing up 100% as a father in your
Mm,
case? How am I showing up 100% in my relationship? How am I showing up in these ways across the spectrum? It's when I go, oh no, my purpose, like I was saying a little earlier, my purpose is to help people,
mm,
but then I forget about my family. I forget about having fun. I forget about
right.
traveling. I forget about self-care. I forget about all these other things. Then I burn out. But when
Yeah,
I really align to my purpose here on this earth is much, much bigger than just this one thing, that's when I don't burn out, because I'm paying attention to all those puzzle pieces as you talked about.
that makes sense. Let me ask you this, Chris. Do you get to decide what your purpose and passion is, or is that out of your hands?
I love that question. That's an entire episode.
Like, do you
So
make the rules? Do you pick it? Because it kind of sounded like when you were talking about, oh, well, when I decide that this is, what's for me, and it's like this is my lane, and it veers a little bit away from, what my true calling is or my true path is. That's where some of the fatigue comes from and whatnot. Okay. So it sounds a little bit like maybe you don't get to call which way you go.
yeah,
That it's
my
just, this is your
my
path.
my joke with it, and it's always a joke when I realize it. But and I've said it to you probably 50 times and other friends is when I go, "Hey universe, I got the wheel, baby.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah, yeah.
worry."
Yeah, yeah.
So as soon as I take
Yeah.
control back and I'm like, "Hey, I'm gonna drive the car for a bit." And it's not
Right.
to get too deep into spirituality and beliefs and all that, but yes, I do believe that like there is a greater purpose for me. And the more that Chris starts deciding what that is
Mm,
versus taking the action, like you said, trying new things, engaging in new things, doing the things that work, stop doing the things that don't work, operating from fear instead of love,
yeah,
right? When I start to do these different things, and more or less the easiest thing for me is, yeah, I take control of the wheel again. I'm going to drive, universe. I got it. Yeah, that's when I start to really, that's when the car starts veering off and hitting the
right.
median and spinning in the road and all that kind of stuff. And when I realize it, I go, yeah, I need to let go, and I just need to take the action and stay out of the results business,
Mm,
which super hard. But I guess I'm curious from your perspective as we talk about alignment, greater purpose, and you know, and we can wrap up this part of the show, in a few moments. But I guess I'm just curious from your perspective, what is it like for you when I talk about, the idea that I take control again and shit starts to kind of get a little wonky? What's your experience with that?
well, look, man, again, you and I are completely biased, right? Because we are part of a group that sees the world through a different lens than others, right? Spirituality, some of our beliefs that we share, our ideas about just the world in general. So, knowing that we might be a bit biased, I would be super interested to hear what the listeners, whoever's listening to this, I want to hear what you guys think about this conversation because that would probably be much more interesting than what I
For
have to
sure.
say or what Chris has to say. But since you asked me, I might as well. I think that I think that every single experience that I have says that when I trade to take full control of my life, I run it into the ground.
Mm,
And that's with the worst intentions, and that's with the best intentions. That
got
it
it.
doesn't necessarily matter. When I think that I'm in charge and I know what's best, I'm in trouble, right? And so every experience I have indicates that. But I like what you said, man, that it's I just need to take the action, you know, and not worry too much about the control or the fantasy of control or where I'm going or what I'm doing because it kind of goes back to the whole how are you going to find your passion and purpose to begin with? Well, certainly not from like sitting at home thinking about it, right? That's not going to work.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, I think I'm going to just do this. No, you have to explore, man. And the thing that, going back to being a father, one of my favorite things today is taking my daughter to the park because I get to go to the park and watch her go run up to random strangers, kids, and just go play with them and go explore trees and go in the bushes and go, just wander around with this, childlike wonder. And sometimes I wish I could see the world through her eyes because I forget what that's like. But I believe that when we be more like our children and not get too caught up with what people think, what society says we must do, what stigmas and taboo, boundaries and barriers we're facing. Like when we let all that shit rest and just do, what comes natural and just take the next right indicated step, and you just put one foot in front of the other and come at it from the point of view of like, I know nothing. I'm just trying to do my best. Um, that's when life is good. And for my daughter, it's good most of the time, you know?
Yeah, I hear that. That's
So
why play is a big thing. One day we'll have to dive
yeah,
into
you
that a little
talked
bit
about that.
more.
That would be a good podcast
Yeah,
episode to talk about play because that's something that no one talks about.
for sure. Yeah,
And it's so important.
yeah, being a kid again. Hmm.
Man, I'm passionate about this.
Me too.
I know you are. And I think that for anyone that's listening, you know, YouTube, as much as sometimes it could be a hole that we can get sucked into, a rabbit hole, it's it's a really good place to also start wandering with childlike wonder. There's so much content that's out there on YouTube that at any point, man, you can just start looking at random videos, man. And maybe you'll find something that you can relate to, something that piques your interest, you know? It's a wonderful place to be. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to do this with you, Chris. And I do believe that you and I, when we had that moment next to the pool where I looked at you and said, gut level, bro, I think in that moment, boom, a light bulb came on for both of us, right? Which was a clear indication that we're on the right path. And I think since then we've found another puzzle piece to our big puzzle board of life.
It never ends. But
It
yes,
doesn't.
the next puzzle piece.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
So,
Um,
I mean, after all that, I guess let's start to wrap it up.
I
One
suppose
experience, two perspectives, and now three invitations.
three
So
invitations.
we talk about the three invitations being the ABCs.
ABC.
What's and again, a lot for our community. What's awareness that you built around the topic, the experience today? What's a barrier standing in your way um, of not continuing to move along this journey to find your purpose, to find things of passion? And then what's your C, your call to action? So
Mm.
start us off from ABC, awareness, barrier, call to action.
Yeah, well, I think that the awareness today was one, I got super emotional when talking about being a father, and I wasn't expecting that, but it just kind of reaffirms that that's part of why I'm here today, and after kind of how life has been the last couple months and the chaos and I, sometimes I lose sight of that. So I think it's important for me to remember and be aware that what those puzzle pieces are and not only how important they are to my life, but how important I am to them.
Hmm.
So it's my awareness. What about you, Chris?
Hmm. So much today that I'm like
Mm,
just marinating in. Um,
yeah.
I mean, I think the awareness I love, my awareness is now using this and looking at purpose through the lens of a puzzle.
Mm,
So I appreciate you. I appreciate the way that you frame that because for some reason it really resonates in my head. And so I think there's that piece. And then I'll say a second one is the idea of continuing to try new things. So
yeah.
taking the initiative to try something new once a day, once a week, once a month, whatever it is,
Yeah.
to continue to be able to find these little hidden puzzle pieces of passion and purpose
Yes.
feels right.
There's no limit on how many puzzle pieces you can have in life. The
Yeah,
more,
it
the
feels.
better.
Mm. So, what's a barrier that you think might stand in your way of continuing on the journey?
Well, the barrier is simple, man, is that even if you are acutely aware of what your passion and purpose is and you're fully in alignment and in tune with it, the peskiness of our fallible minds can get in the way. And I'm talking stress, depression, anger, selfishness, right? These things sometimes block us from what our path is. And, I didn't do something this week out of fear.
Yeah.
I wanted to, I had every intention to do it, but I didn't do it because of a thought. And and I know how to overcome that, which is the call to action. Is I could have probably called you, right? You just found out about that today
Right.
because the question for the podcast, but I probably should have, could have, and will in the future make that phone call, check in with you, and just share with you, hey man, I'm feeling a bit of fear about this. I'm feeling insecure. I want to bail out and just talk to you about it. Because what happens when I talk to another person and share what's going on in my head, because sometimes I can't figure this out on my own. I
Yeah.
need someone else. Is that I may have gone on that not date and I may have had a good time. And then I may have had something else to talk to today, but I didn't. And that's a barrier. And that's my call to action. Your
Love
turn,
it.
CB3.
The barrier for me is lack of curiosity, really.
Mm,
It feels so much like this kind of childlike
dude.
curiosity is what's so important. And so
Yeah.
you talked about that, like the barrier for you is the stress, the mind, the fears, the things like that. And I think the opposite side of that for me, right? So if that's one side, the other side is to have this like curiosity about
Mm,
life, that there's more to find, there's more joy,
yeah.
there's more pleasure, there's more passion, there's more purpose to it. And so it's, instead of saying like I found it and I know where it is and like I got it,
Right.
I've trapped it. I've trapped
Right.
the
My
the
precious.
little leprechaun.
My precious.
I've trapped it. I have it. Is to like it is to be is to continue to be curious. And so I think like my
It's great.
barrier, which I'm also then going to turn into the call to action, is orienting my mind consistently towards curiosity. So
More.
more
Yeah.
curiosity, be
More.
curious every moment, right?
Dude, I
That
love that.
there's something else. And so that's my
We
call
get
to
so
action for
comfortable,
this week.
man. We get so
Yeah.
comfortable that sometimes it gets hard. We're like, cool, I've arrived. Maybe it's not what I wanted, but we settle. And so we can't
Yep.
settle, man.
Maybe most importantly about this episode, who's going to win the Super Bowl today?
Oh, God. Well, I have a very strong opinion about this
I know
because
you have biases that we're not going to
the
talk about
Chiefs
on this
beat the
episode.
49ers in the very last Super Bowl that we played in. And then the Eagles just beat us to keep us from this Super Bowl, which, you know, the way that happened too, we lost two quarterbacks. It was less about the Eagles and more about us. So, for that reason, and also my former partner is a diehard Chiefs fan. So, there's a big part of me that wouldn't mind if she wasn't super happy today. So,
There's no
go
resentment.
Eagles!
There's no resentment there.
No, no resentment. One of our good friends, Pete, is a diehard Eagles fan, and
What's up? What's
so
up? What's up,
shout
DC
out Pete.
Pete?
Hope you guys win today, and I think you guys will win today because you guys have a great team. The Eagles have a great team. Chiefs just have a great quarterback. So, what do you think? Who do you got?
I got the
The great
Chiefs.
Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, I got the Chiefs. I mean, it doesn't play well, of course, that I'm a Commanders fan,
Yeah,
born and raised,
this is
and
true.
die hard, kind of no matter what. Unfortunately, that
The commies.
I don't like
The
that I don't like
commies.
I don't like the Eagles, and I've had a lot of incidents over the years with their fans as well, which is another story.
Yeah, they're
But I
friends.
think Patrick Mahomes is just one of the greats. I think he's going to be able to bring it home, and I'm super stoked to watch. Starts in 5 minutes, so
5
kind of
minutes,
exciting.
bro. We gotta get out of here, man. We gotta go.
Well, then let's roll,
Love you,
baby.
homie.
Love you too,
Hey,
Rome.
all of you guys listening, please like, comment, subscribe, check us out. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. Everything is at the gut level. We got it all. You can also email us at thegutlevel@gmail.com. We will respond. We promise. And please share this. and join our community. We would love you to be a part of this giant puzzle piece that we are trying to create. So, with that, have a good week.
Love you, brother.
Love you.
Love you
homie.
guys. Thanks for joining.
Well, let's fucking go.